And welcome back. This is the History of Violence. I'm Marcus,
I'm Joe.
and we're bringing you another History of Violence short. Today we're talking the Legend of Billie Jean. The man, this was like a big childhood movie for me. Weirdly, this was an HBO like on every day for a whole summer kind of a thing.
Absolutely. I mean, fair is fair.
Fair's fair, which I guess was the original working title of this movie, and I don't. I'm glad they changed the title because I don't think it would be anything close to what it is if it was just called Fair is Fair. That's a terrible
It's a
title.
it's an awful title.
But I mean, this is a I hesitate to say it's a good movie, but it has something, even if it doesn't always quite get to where it's going. Like it has something. There's a lot I would fix or change about it if I had if I was able
Yeah.
to go back and do something about it. But like, I still love what they did with this movie, even though it's kind of not good.
I mean, it's razor thin plot wise, but it still has like that quality that all of those classic movies that we kind of love from that era, like the Goonies and Gremlins and all that. Like it's from a kid's perspective. It's not,
Mhm.
an adult perspective looking down on them or anything like that. Like you feel like you're kind of in the trenches with these kids.
Yeah, for
That
sure.
said,
And yeah, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say that said, there's still not a ton like contextually going on here.
You want to, before we jump into it, read us the video box, such as it is.
Yeah. So the back of the video box, as it was in the 80s, is The Legend of Billie Jean. All Billie Jean wanted was $608 from the boy who broke her brother's scooter. When you come from a small town in Texas, justice is something you have to win for yourself. Billie Jean didn't mean to become a fugitive. She never heard of Joan of Arc. But her fight for justice raised an army of kids strong enough to take on the law and the national media. Who knew Billie Jean and company were only armed with guns from a toy store? Or that hostage Lloyd tied himself up to be with the gang? Lloyd said, in a crazy world, you gotta be crazier than they are. And that's when Billie Jean became a legend. I love that description.
I
That's
do love
awesome.
that description. She never heard of Joan of Arc. Like,
Right?
I wonder what they're doing in that school in Corpus Christi that she doesn't know who Joan of Arc is because she seems to be like a senior, maybe.
It seems that way, but yeah.
I feel like she should
So
have heard of Joan of Arc, but be that as
I
it
maybe
may, yeah, this movie it has something that I really can't even describe. And I don't quite get, like, I feel like they never really sell the, like, everybody, like, all the youth, or, I mean, they show us that the youth are on her side, but I never really get that she's, like, leading some kind of youth rebellion thing. She's kind of doing
it's
her own thing,
yeah,
and, like, the youth kind of pick up on it and go, okay, we're with you, but she never is, like, trying to lead them or anything.
it's super weird. I mean, it you never really get exactly why they get behind her outside of the fact that I guess every kid that lives in Texas and where they go, I don't think they make it out of Texas the
Yeah, I don't
majority of
think
the
so.
movie. So it's like every kid in Texas just must have like parents and adults that don't listen to them at all, I guess, because
Apparently.
that's really all they're going on. I mean,
And there's a scene in this movie that, like, I'm like, if you expanded on this and made this more of the focus of the movie, I think you'd really have something. But there's the so she basically they this whole motor scooter plot happens. They go on the run and they start kind of picking up media and becoming like celebrity outlaws, kind of, just to fill everybody in a little bit on the plot, more so than the VHS box kind of gives away. And they so these kids confront her in the um parking, like they're getting some supplies or whatever, and these kids come over and say, hey, you're Billie Jean, we know this kid's being abused and he needs help, and you can go take care of this. And so she marches all these kids down to this house and takes this kid out of this abusive home. And you're like, this should be the fucking movie right here. This is the movie.
it
Is
should be.
like, she stands up for herself. All these kids form up on her as kind of like not a gang, but like they are following her. And then she kind of like gets empowered by helping this kid that's in trouble and starts doing shit like this. Like she
Right.
starts kind of doing some vigilantism or whatever, and kind of I feel like that should be the movie, because that's like the scene in the movie
Yeah.
where you're like, yes, motherfucker, like yes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they don't really lean into that nearly enough. I mean, it really sticks to the basic plot of the fact that the dude trashed her brother's scooter, and then her dad tried to, make her work on the installment plan, which you're like,
Super
oh,
creepy
geez,
scene, by the way.
really creepy. But yeah, they really missed an opportunity to like sell her going around and having it be like a modern retelling of like Robin Hood or something like that. Like she's out there doing all this good for kids and helping these kids that aren't heard, that are abused, that are whatever it is. Because they've got the one girl with her that ran away from home willingly because her mom's always beating her and grounding her and just generally being pissy.
Hmm.
The only time we see the mom in the whole movie, she smacks the shit out of her. So you're like,
Yeah,
it should be more about that for sure.
it just feels like that's where the real, like, if you want to get the youth empowerment plot going, that's where you know that's where to go with it. And yeah, played by the great Yardley Smith, by the way, that one character who
Yep.
is like the least southern person that ever existed, but nonetheless.
Oh man, those accents are wicked bad.
And but yeah, I just feel like, so there's that, and then there's a montage later in this movie that, like, I think that's the thing that maybe made me want to make movies, like possibly like from like were one of the first things that made me want to make movies. Like the perfect marrying of images and music. It's better than the entire rest of the movie is this montage that is
Yeah.
at the end of this movie where Billie Jean is kind of traveling around Texas trying to escape from the law and get back to Corpus Christi, and all these people are picking her up along the way, and they kind of have this relay system. Like she's on a motorcycle for a little bit with a guy, and then he drops her off, and she gets in some kid's Camaro and gets past the police checkpoint and whatever, and she ends up at this, like, I don't know, this underground kind of like rave thing or something,
Yeah, it's really
warehouse,
weird. Something.
and Pat Benatar is playing this song Invincible, which she apparently disclaims is like not a great movie. This that she wrote the song for, but
Yeah, she in concert when she plays Invincible says this is from the worst movie ever made, and you're like, really, Pat? The
this
worst movie ever made? It's a
this is
tall
far from the
order.
worst movie ever made. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I can think of a
but
lot of movies that are way worse.
this montage is like, it makes the entire movie. Without this montage, this movie would be 90% less watchable.
I mean, it's super cool, especially like once she cuts her hair and she's got the whole get up and everything. You're like, it's just all the aesthetics and the music and the montages make up for any lack of plot. And then you also get 17-year-old Christian Slater, which who doesn't want that?
Yeah, Christian Slater and Helen Slater not related, by the way.
Not related, but Christian Slater thought while they were shooting the movie that they were fated to be married since their last names were the same. Which, I mean,
I
who
can
could blame
understand his
Christian
feelings on
Slater for
that.
having a, yeah, I mean, nobody's blaming him for having a crush on Helen Slater, so,
Yeah, watch this movie and don't have a crush on Helen Slater, and try not to.
right? So,
Like,
super fun
so,
movie, but it did have a few misses, but then, Peter Coyote shows up and you're like, I'm okay with it.
all right, Peter Coyote, I love. He's like, I mean, he's the dad in the Monster Squad, so he's got that going for him, right? He's also,
Yep.
he plays basically the same role. It's like if the Monster Squad happened the next day, and he discovered that there's the Universal monsters. Like, he's
Yeah,
essentially the same character almost.
pretty much. I think this is the movie that he had the most lines in, though. I mean,
Yeah,
usually he's pretty stoic, or like, I'm not even sure he has more than 10 lines in E.T. I mean, I,
yeah,
I
apparently
really
so.
just remember him standing around.
And he's like, I say this liking Peter Coyote, but I feel like he's the guy that they call if like Sam Shepard and Tom Skerritt can't work it on the movie or whatever. Like they're like, oh, I got Peter Coyote on the line.
He should have been bigger than he was, by all
He really
means.
should
I
have.
love Peter.
He's got a great quality of, like, you feel like he's like the guy that's like the cop or the bureaucrat that's like in a really unenviable position that has to kind of, okay, well, I gotta do the job, but I don't like that I have to do this part of the job.
When he's super badass, because he's on the kids' side from the first moment he talks to him. He just can't prove
Mm-hmm.
it, and there's not much to do, and he just wishes that, like you said, like, I can't really do anything, so maybe you just drop it. But then as it goes, like, he's the one dude who's behind him all the way.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of this movie, police basically stop trying to, I don't know, arrest her or anything when she shows up. There's a big confrontation at the end on the beach, and I mean, I guess they shoot Christian Slater, but other than that, they stop trying to really like. I don't know. I mean, he's not trying to arrest her whatsoever. He just like is letting her go,
I mean,
and
Christian Slater had it coming though. He was kind of he had some moments throughout the film where you're like, you're going to catch a beating one of these days. And
you really need to stop gesticulating with this fake gun of yours that looks real.
so he got off pretty easy just catching one in the shoulder.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he really probably was very lucky to have survived that ordeal.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I mean, a cop now would have just like shot him in the head and like, okay, it's over, Johnny.
You're right. Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I don't even know how to describe. So you mentioned Robin Hood before, and they go with this whole Joan of Arc thing, which I think is, I mean, the title is kind of supposed to be like the Legend of Joan of Arc, but it's Billie Jean instead.
right.
And but I really think they should have leaned more on the Robin Hood aspect of it because I think that's really what this movie's about. Joan of Arc kind of doesn't. The only reason we have that is because she gets the inspiration for the movie. Like, there's a scene where when they I can't think of the character's name now that Keith Gordon plays all of a sudden. Um,
Oh, it's
they
Lloyd.
when they are at his house and he's watching the Passion of Joan of Arc, I believe, and so he is she gets the inspiration to shave her head like Maria Falconetti has in that movie,
Right.
her head shaved, and so she does the same thing, which is a cool look and a cool scene. But we should really like, you know, I think we should maybe she should see Errol Flynn on TV and kind of cut her hair short or something because this is way more of a Robin
Yeah.
Hood thing, Joan of Arc thing.
Well, and they have that whole like as they go and they pick up more kids and whatnot, like they have that kind of band of merry men thing going. Like
Mm.
it starts out with just her and Banks, and then they get their two friends involved because one has a car and the other just wants to come along. And they're immediately all in it. And then everywhere they go, it's like they pick up another kid. They're running down the streets. More people are helping her out. Like it becomes this giant network that just lends itself to that story being retold in 1980s Texas instead of, outside of, some township in England. Like it just
Hmm.
it would work that way. It's kind of like I get the play on the title and the character arc and, kind of likening it to Joan of Arc, but I think it would have made for a little bit more of a an interesting take if they went a little bit deeper. And it's probably just I mean, you get somebody this is directed by Matt Robbins who did Batteries Included, so he's not a bad filmmaker. He's made some really cool stuff. But if you get a writer that really understands that and builds out that world and maybe push that 90 minutes a little bit more, you can like really flesh out some of these other characters and her influence on that whole movement.
Yeah, it really seems like they just kind of had this idea, but then they gave short shrift to like all of the like youth in revolt aspects of this whole thing
Right.
because you want her to be like this. I mean, when you're watching it as a kid, at least when I was watching as a kid, you do feel like she's leading this movement or whatever. I watch this and I'm like, okay, I want to be like Billie Jean or whatever. But then you
Right.
watch it as an adult and you're like, these kids are not in revolt. They're just kind of, I don't know, they're just cutting their hair to be like somebody on TV or something. And, which I guess is enough of a revolt in its own way, but it's just not kind of how the plot needs to. It's not the plot you need, or it's not enough to be a plot for a movie. Like, you need them to be more proactive in being vigilantes or something. And you need kind of something to really grab onto where you can see why these kids would be getting on her side beyond just she's falsely accused of something.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to come out and say it. I like Pat Benatar. I know she doesn't like the movie. We were only 4 years shy of it being the ultimate musical montage because I couldn't help but think the montage is super cool, but it would be better if it was Skid Row's Youth Gone Wild.
Yeah, that would be cool. I do. I mean, yeah, that's a hard one for me. I do love, despite his nature, I do love Sebastian Bach, and
Same.
you know, and plus it just kind of works really well with what's going on in the movie or what potentially could be going on in the movie.
I mean, it kind of has that effect of that's how all the adults look at all these kids. But then,
Mm.
they understand that, she's really fighting for something that's pretty fundamental. just to be believed and heard and compensated for, actual property damage. I mean, what a
Yeah.
what a concept.
And I feel like I feel like this movie could be remade really easily now, as, you could have her go viral on TikTok or something like that and start gaining support that way. And I mean, I don't really know how, uh, I just spitballing here, but if she did some of this vigilante stuff and she's live streaming it as she's doing it to show what she's doing to her audience, like if she's, she goes to this kid's house and there's somebody following her with a phone just saying, okay, she's going to Billy's house to save him or whatever,
I
and then
mean,
that spreads on the internet, that to me is kind of compelling.
I think it makes a little bit more sense in how the legend would grow with something like TikTok than in the 80s. These kids only have word of mouth or what's on the news, and the news is going to be portrayed from the angle of the adults and seemingly, the shop owners point of
Yeah.
view of they shot him and all that. Whereas on TikTok, you can pass that stuff around. You can get the real story out pretty easily amongst kids. I think you could do it. Somebody could do it really well, especially if you get somebody who's like really, I guess, tied into that sort of storytelling. Like it could be something like Christopher Landon could do that did like Happy Death Day or anything like that. That
Yeah, I
guy's
could
really
see that.
savvy of how that works.
I could definitely see that. And just, I think, because like they record one video using Lloyd's
Yeah.
equipment here, but she needs to be like constantly, updating people on, it needs to be faster. She's needs to be
Yep.
updating people, going, this is what's happening, this is where I'm at. We're in, we're not in Corpus Christi anymore. We're in Tyler, Texas, and we're doing this now. And
Yeah.
then, oh, this person contacted me on my DMs and said that you know, their dad hit them or whatever, and I'm gonna go stop it.
Right. Yeah. So it's a really fun movie though. I hadn't seen it in a long time, and I forgot how much that I really enjoyed watching it. Even for a bare bones plot.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it in probably, I don't know. It was one of those ones, like I said, perennially on like HBO when I was a kid, and every time it was on,
Yep.
I'm like, okay, I know what I'm watching now. Legend of Billie Jean's on, and then I probably hadn't seen it since the mid 2000s maybe. So when it was, whenever the DVD kind of release came out at some point.
Right.
Um, but yeah, just a super enjoyable,
Yep.
even for,
Absolutely.
like you said, bare bones plot and all of that. Like it's super fun, and I mean, I don't. There's so much there that you could do something with.
Absolutely. For sure.
So yeah, that's the Legend of Billie Jean.
Yeah.
And so we're here on YouTube trying out some history of violence shorts. But if you want to see our full size podcast, or I guess not see, but hear our full size podcast, you can check us out on Apple and Spotify on the History of Violence podcast. We're on Instagram at History of Violence podcast, and we do a full thing, a full show like this, but more so.
Yep. We get a little bit
Uh,
more into production stuff and box office and behind the scenes with casting and production notes, all that kind of stuff on the full ones.
yeah, we're just getting into the holiday season. We got Lethal Weapon coming up. We've got we did Batman, Superman, all the way back to Hard Target, and I mean all kinds of stuff. I can't even think of all the episodes now we've done. We got, what, 20 episodes in the can?
Just over 20. Yeah. We're almost at it's like mid 20s now. I think by the end of the year we'll be at 26.
Yeah, so definitely check us out and give us a rating, give us a follow on Instagram if you're liking this, and we'll definitely be back with more shorts.
Absolutely.
So until next time, peace.
Take it easy.